You go out there, you tear their fucking heads off, and you shit down their necks. Let us pray.
So yeah, this is an aftershock. This is the segment Aftershock.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to say that. So we did Remember the Titans last week, which objectively to me kind of sucked. It was watchable, but it kind of sucked. I wouldn't watch it a third time.
No.
That was the second time I'd ever seen the movie. I won't watch it a third time.
You won't talk me into it.
No. Necessary Roughness now. This week. I finished watching it this morning, okay? I enjoyed it. But it is what it is, right? Like, the movie is not selling itself as being some, like, ultra deep, thoughtful narration on college football.
Correct.
It is based on the SMU scandal. So basically the plot of this movie, Necessary Roughness, if you haven't seen it, and there are spoilers coming. And I've never seen the movie. I was told, definitely got to go watch it. Saw that it was like 33% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not usually a good sign. But with a 90s movie like that, that's about football, it's supposed to be kind of a meatball comedy. It worked. It worked. You know, the plot moved from thing to thing.
Yep.
They didn't spend too much time on anything. There was a lot of things that were telegraphed, the whole 9 yards. But the thing's based on SMU, and the plot of the movie is, listen, this Texas State, and they look just like North Texas. Mm-hmm. This school has broken the rules. And
They've cheated.
Yep, they need a cleanup man, and they got this coach with a mustache
who's like clean as a whistle.
He's the cleanup man. That's what they know him to be. Like the AD hired him on site after an interview where they just drugged the school through the mud. The guy was shitting on the school, and then
it was
the
like
AD
the Pony Express 30 for 30. Guy comes right off of that 30 for 30. He's like, "You're my man."
Yes, you're my man. Like literally, I don't care if you win a game, but we just want to run a clean program, so we can have a program, which makes no sense actually. Cost benefit analysis would tell you with running college football programs, like why just do it to do it. Anyways, it's based on SMU, and everybody remembers the sanctions when they got the death penalty in the late 80s. So there is some truth to the movie, but it's not like it's not a serious movie. It's not that good, but it's exactly what it was promised to be, in my opinion.
My opinion, it was. I appreciated it for the. I remember watching it in the '90s, and it was just a funny movie. It was It's like the perfect airplane movie, where you're like on an airplane to Hawaii or something, and you got to pick something.
It's not too long. It's not too big
mindless.
of a commitment. It's an hour 40 or whatever it is.
It's mindless. You don't have to do any deep thought. You can chuckle at some stuff. And for me, it's all about Kathy Ireland.
It is, and you had to wait exactly. Do you know how long to see Kathy Ireland?
I don't know.
And 61 minutes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like to celebrate an hour of Necessary Roughness, they brought Kathy Ireland on.
Yeah, and by the way, like immediately I was like, I remember getting that swimsuit issue.
Oh my gosh, dude! But Kathy Ireland was unbelievable. Probably still is. Like, listen, and she was much needed because the worst football scene in the whole movie was the kicker just drilling the offensive line's back with an extra point.
I've always wondered what it feels like as the long snapper to get imagine like Greg the Leg.
Yeah.
At like 50 when
Greg Zuerlein,
when he goes all in.
Yeah.
And he just happens to pipe that right up your butt. Like,
I don't know. And the verbiage is interesting there, but yeah, I mean, like that definitely would hurt. And here was the thing about Kathy Ireland. I mean, like, what? I mean, there's just a girl like that who can kick a football through the uprights.
From an athleticism,
that looks like that. Like, it was just unbelievable. And you know what was unbelievable about the whole movie? I get it's Texas, but you got beautiful professor. You've got, remember the workout class? They were all dimes in that workout class. Yes. Everybody was in shape. Like literally everybody was in shape. I know it was the 80s and people did a lot of like jazzercise and shit. The rate on beautiful women in that class
you pan
was high.
Across before you see them.
And you know what? Here's the thing about talking about beautiful women in the early 90s. I can't get in trouble. It's not who they are anymore. So if my lovely wife's listening to this and I say, oh man, Kathy Ireland was a smoke show in Necessary Roughness, first it's undeniable, but it's not that big a deal. That was 1991. She looks different now.
The only thing that got me was the athleticism of her kicking the field goal.
I think they played up her unathleticism, which I think was fucked up. Like, I think they made her try to look like laborious kicking that ball. And like the kicks were great. But the run up to the kicks, I was like, oh no.
Goofy, yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? It's pretty cool. Some foreshadowing. We had a Vandy female kicker this year.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so we're there. I mean, that's exciting. Bateman, by the way, Jason Bateman's in this movie.
And so is like a very young Rob Schneider.
Rob Schneider.
And you can see his SNL skit.
Yes. Rob Schneider blew me away because young Rob Schneider had Miles Teller vibes.
Yeah. And you could see like the later movies that Rob Schneider would do.
Yeah.
and like his SNL skits, you can
bits.
kind of see him
Developing.
in his press conference, like his what do you call him?
Yeah, well, he's so dry and so sarcastic. I mean, I remember the one time he's like, "You only had 8 men to beat." Like, he was just shitting on the team. But he was perfectly cast. Rob Schneider was perfectly cast before he was like Rob Schneider. Kathy Ireland was perfectly cast. And I thought
The Samoan
Manu.
Yeah,
he's my favorite. Like, listen, this movie was cast very well.
Yes.
And there were a lot of likable characters. Whereas last week, Remember the Titans, I was like, oh, this movie, like, it's hard to like anybody in this movie. Of course, it dealt with racism and that sort of thing. So, but Manu was one of my favorites. The coaches, okay?
yes,
The coaches were a strength of the movie. The coaches were a strength of the movie because they were the type of guys that you'd want to hang out with. They were like real football coaches, extremely dry, like great sense of humor. Like everything wasn't taken too serious. Like there's this kind of like fatalistic air about being a football coach.
Yeah.
Like just shit's gonna go wrong, especially when you're coaching somewhere like Texas State and you've got to field a team of 17 kids who weren't on scholarship the year before because the program got essentially a death sentence. So they're out there recruiting kids. They're going to what's his name's house?
Scott Bakula.
Scott Bakula. Is that how you say his name?
I think, but
Is it Bakula or Bakula?
I think it's Bakula.
I don't know. Count Bakula.
Yeah, so-
Count Bakula was out there in the field, blue 32, hitting a fucking scarecrow. I mean, he was Uncle
Drilling
Rico.
it.
He was Uncle Rico personified.
But the thing that struck me was when I was like, oh my God, my daughter has been into NCIS New Orleans.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at him there, and I'm
That's where he is
yeah,
now.
dude hasn't aged. He looks the same.
No, he hasn't aged. And you know what was funny about the thing? I think he said he was 34, but he was probably about 37 if I did the math correctly, looking it up. At first, like all these other football movies, I'm like, oh, fuck, is Scott Bakula going to be like, is he going to be like the Gary Bertier of the world where they're just trying to sell you on the fact that this 35-year-old is in college? Or like, our guy, any of those guys from Remember the Titan, they were way old. We talked about that. No, it made sense. He was a washed up, but like prolific quarterback from, at that point, the 80s that played high school football and nothing beyond it because his dad died. So they go out to recruit him. One of the best lines was, maybe you should just be a 34-year-old quarterback. It should stay here with all your high school trophies. That was the classic 90s, like, I'm going to change your mind on a big life decision with just one barb.
Yeah.
And then the guy just sits there and looks down at his boots.
Yeah.
And the wheels are turning. And at that point, he's convinced. And people were so easy to convince of shit in the 90s, bro, in movies. Like, it was just unbelievable. This guy's like, no, I'm happy here on the farm. I don't want to go, like, get
Like, who's going to take care of the farm while you're
live in a
doing
dorm.
this?
But in actuality, that's the best thing you could have done. He was single, right? Presumably no wife. He was just a farmer. Like, why wouldn't you want to go to college? He never got to go to college in the first place. This is like Nate Boyer, who's my buddy, who's a Green Beret. You know all about him. Went to play at Texas at like 30. He was Scott Bakula because he was out, defending our country, came back, was like, I want to play college football. What I was saying about the coaches was they're perfect because they were terrible football coaches, but they were perfect football coaches off the field. They were like the type of coaches you want to get a beer with. And they had a great relationship, unlike Denzel and the other guy last week.
Yeah.
I mean,
Boone.
O&D. They had it split down the middle. They had very contrasting styles and personalities. You had the one guy who was in Scarface. Remember, he was the Cuban kingpin in Scarface, and now he was the D coordinator.
I didn't realize that.
And then you had another guy with a mustache that looked like he could have been in a Bronx Tale and anything else in between, but somehow they found themselves in Texas.
The other guy was actually in a Princess Diary.
He
was the assistant to the queen of whatever that's where I was like, why do I know this? It's like, damn kids. They've like, kid movies have filled up too much of my brain now.
But they did have that dryness about them that was perfect for college football coaches or any coaches. Like after the heart attack, quote unquote, before the last game, Wally comes in and introduces himself like he didn't recognize him. Like the joke was that you're really fucked up. Even though he thinks he had a heart attack, he's busting the guy's balls. Like that's football coaches. He said, I charge these flowers to your room. Like, that's football coaches. I thought they were funny, but they had no discipline on their team. Everybody's helmets was unbuckled during practice. Like, the terminology, fly pattern right. They said fly pattern right like 7 times.
Yeah.
Like they ran out of routes in the script.
Like, but they weren't going to teach 17 kids that've never played football before a whole tree.
I know, but the least
It's
you
like
can do.
I'm sure they could have been drawing it up in the sand. It would have been believable.
Yes, but when you draw shit up in the sand, you don't have quadruple coverage, in the words of Rob Snyder, on one end of the field. If you can see the quad coverage on one side of the field from the press box and you're Rob Snyder, like those kids should be able to know the basics. And he didn't even get them lined up. We were doing a headbutting drill. They were just doing a headbutting drill in practice. Bro, we used to do the headbutting thing, me and James Laurinaitis, before games to try to wake up, like on the sideline. And by late in my career, I was like, this is a bit ritualistic and not as cool as it seemed when I was 23. Maybe I should stop. There was a guy named Chuck Cecil. He was a man of a, like, just torpedo free safety in the 80s, played for Green Bay. They damn near outlawed this motherfucker. He was one of our coaches on Jeff Fisher's staff, and he loved to do the headbutt thing. He would run up after me and James Laurinaitis headbutted, grab me by the face mask, and headbutt me. And one time, he started bleeding.
Are you serious?
Right before a noon game at the Edward Jones Dome. It was so good there were no cameras. Like, nobody was paying attention, thank God, because he would have gone viral with a streak of blood coming down his face. But that was the type of 80s shit that was going on in that practice. I mean...
But to your point on the coaches, one of my favorite scenes was the bar fight.
Bar fight was good. It was very like cliche college. Like the sheriff comes in and cleans it up. They didn't do that at Virginia. Like the local police weren't looking out for us if we got into trouble.
And Dean Elias was the classic douche.
Oh, he was perfectly cast
as the classic douchebag.
Classic douche.
Shows
he was
up
a
all
sexual
happy.
predator.
Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, like how fucked up was his whole like leveraging his position at the school
with the teacher that liked the quarterback? Yeah.
It was bad, and they were kind of like, oh, that's a joke. That also shows how far we've come in
agreed.
30 years. But I just thought the self-respect speech was weak. They were kind of laissez-faire about everything. You let a player play with no pads. They let Sinbad just eat veggies. A guy's out there doing kung fu shit. They're like, whatever goes. But that's what I like. They knew they were in a fucked up situation. They were institutionalized. These coaches, any coach would turn down that job. But coaches get institutionalized, and they can't not coach football.
Yeah.
They miss it too much. They're too so that's what I took that relationship and that decision making of taking that job to be.
God, that kung fu scene where
it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable.
What was the one where wasn't it who was in the NFL drop kick somebody once?
Oh, I think it was an accident, quote unquote.
Yes.
It was a wide receiver, I want to say. Do you guys remember
Wasn't it a Steelers?
Antonio Brown.
Antonio Brown kicked the punter. Yes, dude. It was exactly like that. And then the official in the last game was like, which I thought was actually pretty funny. There were a few really good lines in this movie. He said, Takatami and sword block to the... Never mind. He went through this whole thing, dude.
And he was going through every name of... Yeah, he was like sidekick, blah, blah, blah. That cracked me up.
But the best line, and maybe my favorite scene, I don't know about you, was when the prisoners came up. It was so short and so out of place, but they made those guys look like fucking just the scariest
Jim Kelly
people.
had a do-rag on.
Jim Kelly had a do-rag on. You had Dick Butkus, who acted as well as anybody in the movie.
Well, and in that scene, he's like, gentlemen, it's nice to be on your field.
Yeah.
Since it's your home field, why don't you have ball first?
Gentlemen, this is your home field, so please take the ball.
And you're like, how's this going to play out?
But it was perfect. Like the comedic element to it was great, and he acted it so well. And they really just beat the shit out of those guys.
Before the snap even came, so I'm like, oh, we're going to actually play. And then before the snap, they're beating the shit out of everybody.
They're just beating them up. And Herschel Walker, it's amazing looking back at that cat and being like, oh, he totally lost his mind. And I could see it in his stare. Like, he totally lost his mind in the last, 5 years, right? And in 1991, I could see it in his eyes. He was a little off. I mean, the craziest, most prophetic, fucked up thing, I don't know if you caught this, was Holyfield saying, I swallowed a finger out there.
I don't feel so good. I think I swallowed a finger.
I did.
And
he still had the ear. His ear
had his ear.
Yeah.
That was 91.
Yeah. That was weird. I mean, caught that.
The best line was Sinbad lining up. I believe you're all innocent, man. I
truly do.
I mean that.
I truly do.
I mean that. So I love that scene. I love seeing Jason Bateman. He delivers lines just like he does now on Ozark.
Yeah.
Well,
Arrested Development.
Yeah. I mean, he's been the same. Like he is.
So
he's been able to be in so much stuff.
and his dry kind of humor and like his ability to like say kind of like like he's funny without him trying to be funny.
No, I mean,
It's hilarious.
just he's bone dry. He's bone dry, and he delivers the same line. He delivers a line on Necessary Roughness that sounds just like the line on Ozark, but you can use it for two totally different things. I Gotta See sounds like I buried him in the backyard. You know what I mean? Like, so I was really happy to see Jason Bateman. Loved Manu. We talked about Manu. By the way, Manu's name is Peter Tuiasosopo. He was actually undrafted with the Cardinals in the 80s and then played during the strike season for 3 games as a center. So
Really?
kind of a little reality or art imitating reality for that cat. Like he's been a replacement. He was a replacement there. And by the way, this movie was the Replacements before it was the Replacements. It was on a college campus. That's all it was.
That was playing on Hulu or something last night, and I was like, and it was just I saw a fleeting image of Keanu, and I was like, I wonder if that's going to be one of the ones we'll do.
No, we got to do the Replacements. I'm really looking forward to doing the Replacements, North Dallas 40, the whole 9 yards. I do want to say the locker room fight, there was a crossroads for this team. They were 0-5, and then they wanted to tie or win a game. So they were at the crossroads. And I think they lost actually their 7th straight game, and they go in the locker room, and some guy tells another guy to bang an armadillo or something.
Yeah.
It's like the weird lines that people use in movies. But the guys just start swinging on each other, and it gets broken up so fast. And this like preceded the bar fight too, so they had a bunch of fights. And a lot of times I think fights do actually bring teams together. The fight was ridiculous in that they got over it so fast. If you fight in a locker room, like you throw punches at each other, dudes aren't going to be over it that fast. You know, it's going to take a day or two.
You're saying you can fight in the field, it's one thing.
But when you fight in the locker room, that's a whole nother thing. When you fight in the locker room, it becomes like it's spilled over, and it's a bit more like man to man.
Oh, you're now
player.
outside the lines.
But I always looked at it like, hey, if you got in a scuffle or you were watching 2 guys get in a scuffle, coaches always try to say, don't take it off the field, and I totally get that. But if you're fighting somebody on the field, to me, there's always the risk that it comes off the field. If you're punching somebody in the face, it already is personal.
Yeah.
And we had a fight in college that was like in the locker room, and our season did like take off from there. You know, like, so I mean, it happened right in the locker room, and dudes that are very tight now were punching each other in the face. And you know, it takes 3-4 days to get over something like that, but eventually when you do, maybe if your team's built right and you have the right leadership, you can come out on top and you can actually get something from it. And in this very silly movie,
I like, a lot of football movies, it's either 10-0 or 0 forever, but you win or tie the last game.
Yep.
And I like the buildup of the last game.
I thought they were probably going to have them lose the game in some like, hey, it's okay,
or tie,
like fashion. But they and by the way, they tied Kansas. You were tying games and shit back in the day.
I didn't think that was a thing.
I didn't think it was a thing either. But the final game, how about the win or I'll die quote that Wally came in there with to talk about the coach who had indigestion. I mean, that was legitimately a funny part. So I give the movie credit where credit's due. It was funny. It was mindless. It moved along.
Perfect airplane movie.
I'll give it a 5 out of 10, where I gave Titans like a 4 out of 10. But it's almost on a different scale because it's self-evident this movie's right in the middle.
Yes.
You know?
So I'm calling it the perfect airplane movie. I'd give it a 5 or 6 out of 10 in that on an airplane with no other options besides like a litany of other, mindless movies.
Yep.
I'd select it.
Absolutely would select it. And by the way, Philly special to win, I think. Some sort of Philly special. That's what they did to score that touchdown.
Yes.
And then they run another trick play.
Well, and then you have the flashback to the beginning farm scene and the number.
Oh, yeah, which is just cliche, perfect football stuff.
But throw it so hard that the guy can't knock. It just turn the catch into a sucking chest wound.
Yeah.
So that he can't really not catch it.
Somebody was throwing that game because there's no way they have that much time to throw, just because in the second half, Wally told him he needs at least 4 seconds to throw back there, Paul, which, by the way, golly, I'd love to play in the 90s and the 80s. It took 4 seconds to get a sack. Another thing is, like with no adjustments, 55 was literally humping Paul the entire first half.
Well, some of the early sacks were like a quarter of a second.
Oh yeah, dude. It was like they just let him run free. It was like when the racist, the David Duke of the Remember the Titans team just let somebody go hit our guy from The Wire.
Yep.
It was just like that, except they were like, "Why are you mad at Paul?" And all Wally had to say was give him more time. The adjustments were piss poor.
They went from a quarter of a second to 4 seconds.
I could go on, but next,
it wasn't about the football.
Next movie, what should we watch?
You pick. It's fun for me to go back and visit these.
I want to see a good movie.
Okay.
I want to watch North Dallas 40.
I've never seen it.
Okay, let's watch North Dallas 40 next.
Got it.
Book it.
Done.
Okay. Oh, can I say one more thing? Best part of the movie, most ridiculous part of the movie, was when Manu hit number 55 at the end of the game, and he started bleeding profusely out of his mouth immediately, like during the play. I'm just telling you, I have never seen a more ridiculous scene in a football movie.
Didn't he knock his mask off or something?
Bro, I'm just telling you, there was like dark red blood, which dark red blood I think means it's been there for a while. It's like coming. Everybody knows that's like clotty blood. Like my man had like clotty blood. He had a liter of clotty blood on his chin within a half a second of Manu hitting him. There has never been somebody hit that hard on a football field
that bleeds that quickly.
Number 55. But he had it coming to him.
He did have it coming. I didn't notice the color of the blood.
Manu was an all-star. He was the best character in the movie.
Yeah. I was rooting for him to get more than a kiss on the cheek from Kathy Ireland.
But you know what? Manu was so cool. I was fine with him. He was just there to be supportive.
I was hoping for a Where Are They Now?
I think they need a reboot with Manu and Kathy Ireland.
Where Are They Now? I was hoping for a Where Are They Now?
They're married.
Yeah.
They're married.
Right. With
they're living in Samoa. They're married.
With 11 children.
It's fucking awesome.
Yeah. But we didn't get a Where Are They Now?
Peter Tuiasosopo deserves Kathy Ireland.
100%. Cleared out that shower for her.
Mm-hmm. He was a towel rack.
Yeah.
Y'all take care.